Donald Trump says his plan for a U.S. takeover of the Gaza Strip after his idea was rejected by Palestinians and leaders around the world on Wednesday will still go on. Writing on social media, Trump says Gaza will be turned over to the U.S. by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. Well, Palestinians would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region, says Trump. Trump's plan won't happen, writes our international editor Jeremy Bowen, but it will have consequences. Trump first announced his Gaza plan on Tuesday night, saying he wanted the U.S. to take a long-term ownership position. Israel's defense minister has told its military to prepare a plan to allow any resident of Gaza who wishes to leave to do so, in line with President Trump's proposal for the U.S. to take over the and resettle the 2.1 million Palestinians there. Israel Katz said Gazans should have freedom of movement and migration, and countries critical of Israel's war with Hamas were obligated to take them in. The U.S. Secretary of State, meanwhile, insisted the resettlement will be temporary during Gaza's reconstruction, though Trump says it will be permanent. Palestinian leaders and Arab states have rejected the plan and said that forced displacement would violate international law. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has told President Donald Trump to avoid ethnic cleansing in Gaza after the U.S. leader proposed that Palestinians resettle elsewhere and the United States take over the war-torn enclave. While Guterres did not mention Trump or his Gaza proposal during his address to the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, he implied it.
In the search for solutions, we must not make the problem worse. It is vital to stay true to the bedrock of international law. It is essential to avoid any form of ethnic cleansing.
Well, and for more on this development, international affairs analyst Dr. Marek Laskiewicz joins us from London. Marek, glad to have you join us. Let me now start from where Guterres stopped. He says, in order to solve one problem, you must not make the matters worse. What do you make of that sentence?
He is saying that in an effect, that in trying to solve the current dispute between Israel and Palestine, a move such as getting the Palestinians to leave will only exacerbate the problem. And in this respect, he is supported by, I think, most of the world's leaders.
Let me then ask the question I wanted to ask initially. What was your immediate reaction where you were when you heard Trump make that suggestion?
I was very disappointed. The reason is that America has for many years now, since World War II, been the power for freedom, the power of choice, the power that represents people not having to be oppressed, and it stood for international law. It also stood for people's rights. And now suddenly it is a partisan nation with its views on international law verging on being, shall we say, illegal, to say the least. It is threatening several nations, of course, Greenland being an example. And now it wants to do ethnic cleansing, which is what the move in Gaza is tantamount to. And Trump doesn't even deny, because he says they'll be permanently displaced. It is a huge disappointment and an enormous threat to the world, because obviously other nations have complained. And of all the nations to complain, there's one that stands out: Russia. If Russia complains vociferously, then the Muslims could link up with Russia again, as during the Cold War. Therefore, Trump's comments are not only disappointing, but dangerous for the world order.
While the White House was trying to walk back that statement, then came the statement from Trump that Gaza will be turned over by Israel to the U.S. is it thinking at all about international law, human rights? Help me make sense of this seemingly outlandish suggestion.
It is precisely that, an outlandish suggestion. And the point is that Israel cannot turn over land, which is technically not theirs, to America. Moreover, what does mean turn over? Does that mean American troops are going to be on the ground patrolling and then expelling the Palestinians, the very thing that Trump says he does not want to do? In all this, there are many non sequiturs to the point that people have suggested the whole plan is just a negotiating ploy or merely a gaffe or a wild statement of some sort, which misses the point that is extremely threatening, not just for the Gazans, but for the world.
Just speak to Marek concerning the second phase of the peace deal commencing.
I think it's more than likely to be postponed the way things are going, unless Trump changes his mind, as he did, for example, with Mexico, where he said, okay, we'll give it a month, something along those lines. Then the phase two has really no raison d'etre. After all, if in Israel's eyes and America's eyes, the Palestinians must leave, then there is no peace agreement, no phase two, let alone a two-state solution, which was being mooted just even a few days ago. It therefore follows that phase two will be postponed. And what we're going to see now is a quite deadly game whereby what Trump says or does not say will be weighed, and the consequences, especially if he backs down too much, is as bad in a sense because it ruins his prestige. But either way, the way he's done it now, increasingly, USA is looking to be an unstable, wild place and very partisan, no longer a mediator of any sort, but quite clearly on Israel's side. And therefore, in all this respect, just asking for Russia to step in and also to show it is a friend of the Muslims. And of course, in the sense of taking over other people's land, well, what's the difference between him then and Putin? Or for that matter, if China wants to take Taiwan?
What do you make of the backlash from the international community?
He ignores a great deal of the international community, and I think he's just ignoring it. He's unconcerned about the United Nations, for example. Israel itself has backed out of some United Nations bodies now, and they're just not interested. That's not the point, though, because you see, diplomacy is simply a way of trying to fix things peacefully. Therefore, although he can ignore the international community's calls, he won't be able to ignore if somebody who is powerful, a nation as powerful, decides to oppose him. Here enter the stage for Russia and China. It is one minor point to notice that Russia left Syria quietly, without a fuss, just recently, when, of course, they lost their protege there. However, and all they've done in Arab eyes is to simply leave a rampant USA. And so it's more than likely that the Russians will in some way make it back, which means that USA, although it does not care much about the rest of the community, will be forced to, because, of course, there'll be a confrontation with countries which can stand up to USA to some degree, Russia and China.
I was discussing here, I think day before yesterday or so, with the Palestinian head here in Abuja, Ramsey. And of course, you know that Saudi Arabia is one of the nations that are speaking out staunchly against this suggestion. But he says that while they're speaking out in the open, it's another thing under the table. I don't know how you view that.
I'm not sure. The problem is that we, if you like, as commentators, can only really react when we have facts. Otherwise, we go into outlandish speculations and conspiracy theories and start thinking the game is set when it isn't. There's no obvious sign from anyone that this is happening. Far from it. There is no country that's declared that it was prepared to take in the Palestinians. The Saudi Arabians have quite clearly said they want a two-state solution and are totally uninterested in the plan. And therefore, I think in this respect, this is speculation, and therefore there is no need at present to take this into consideration.
There is talk about ethnic cleansing.
Yes, that is what it is tantamount to. See, underneath all the pretty words comes the brutal reality that the Palestinians are to leave forever, according to Trump. Here, the White House spokespeople have said something different. But the fact of the matter is, Trump is the man, and therefore what he says is important, not what the White House spokespeople say. And it's quite clear this is an ethnic cleansing plan. Trump has declared himself to be very pro-Israeli. Please note, he accepted the Golan Heights belongs to Israel, which nobody else does, apart from Israel, of course. And he also has made Jerusalem accepted that it's the capital of Israel. So he's shown himself to be a friend of Israel. Now he's going that step further, beyond, I think, the wildest dreams of even many Israelis, especially of including the right. So therefore, ethnic cleansing, let's call it by its true name, instead of pretending it's something to do with rebuilding.
I believe the leaders of, I think, Egypt, Jordan are due to get to Washington for a meeting. What are your expectations?
Well, Trump really puts himself into a corner. He can't back down because that means a huge loss of prestige. Moreover, he's shown no sign of backing down. He really believes in this plan. He's obviously going to labor the point with the Egyptians and the Jordanians, perhaps try and use some financial muscle as well. And it's really quite clearly at present that the plan won't make it. However, the brute force of American financial diplomacy, broadly speaking, aid, might do something, possibly. But the fact of the matter is that the other countries, no one wants 2 million Palestinians, as far as one can tell. No one even believes they should leave. And the worst of it is, if you say that you can displace so many people, then where does it stop? Why does America complain about Russia's invasion of Ukraine? And whilst we're at it, the EU now wants a tribunal to put in a war crimes trial. What they're going to do about President Trump? The whole thing is a Pandora's box, and I anticipate the meeting with Egypt and Jordan going nowhere, though there is a possibility Trump, with enormous finances, could make some sort of progress in some sort of first stage of negotiations with them.
All right, Marek, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your interesting analysis.